Sometimes conscious hoaxes, sometimes people with who hallucinate, and 25% of all people hallucinate.
Down upon your bed.
Another UFO.
That's right, the last in the Abduction Month series tonight, another UFO.
I just want to know where I'm supposed to go for liberation. Yeah, knowing my fingers over and over again. Oh.
Universal Media Network presents another UFO. 1, 2, 3, go.
Seen a shooting star tonight, and I thought of you. You're trying to break into another world, a world I never knew. I always kind of wondered if you ever made it through. Seen a shooting star tonight, and I thought of you. Seen a shooting star tonight, and I thought of you. If I was still the same, if I ever became what you wanted me to be, I missed the mark overstepped the line that only you could see. Seen a shooting star tonight, and I thought of me. Listen to the engine, listen to the bell, as the last fire truck from hell goes rolling by. How good people have faith. It's the last temptation, the last account. Last time you might hear the sermon on the mount. Last radio's playing. See the shooting star tonight slip away. Tomorrow will be another day. Guess it's too late to say the things to you that you needed to hear me say. Seen a shooting star tonight slip away.
Another UFO.
Up until 2 years ago, I was pretty skeptical myself about the whole abduction phenomenon. Although I really didn't know that much about it, I was very skeptical. My wife bought me a book. It happened to be Bud's book, Intruders. And as I was reading into the book, I became more and more disturbed. Because in the accounts of the abductees, I was recognizing, a whole laundry list of memories and experiences that I've had in my life, and here it was in front of me in a book, that my own personal life experiences fit this pattern, and that pattern was connected to UFOs and aliens, and it just blew me out of the water. I think I put the book down at 3:30 in the morning and knocked the letter out to Bud right away. And what I did was describe what I thought was a horrible, vivid nightmare I had had some years before. And what we ended up doing was arranging an interview. And the more I talked, the more I realized how much material was there. And it became very frightening for me initially.
All right, well, then the interview. In other words, what impressed you?
Right. Well, all right, the first thing that came up, and this was not something that John was essentially involved with. It just was, for him, almost marginal to other things, but it caught my eye. He described walking home one night on the streets of Brooklyn from a dinner and seeing this object, a very large light, passing overhead, and being extremely intrigued and wondering what this thing was, and then not seeing the thing emerge from the other side of a building and being unclear as to exactly what had happened, and finding himself very, very, very frightened, and he didn't know why. But there was a great deal of fear. He didn't know whether he ran home or what happened. But I recognized right away, in cases like this, when someone, and our listeners could be paying particular attention here, if one has a fairly clear-cut UFO sighting, and it doesn't seem to end in a very clear-cut way, if you remember vividly how it begins, and as you're watching the object, but then its unfolding and its disappearance and all that is very unclear, and you are left with a great deal of terror and confusion, it may mean that you're simply not remembering consciously the rest of the experience.
In the dream state, it's really more of sort of a constant flow, and the state of consciousness when you're awake is quite vivid to people, and they definitely know what they're perceiving and what they're seeing and what they're hearing. When you interact with these beings, you know what you're seeing, you know what you're hearing. Just there's no way that you can confuse the two. I work in the defense industry, and I have a very mainstream 9-to-5 conservative job, and I am not a person that most people would suspect this is happening to. I think a lot of people feel that individuals who claim to be abducted are people living in some backwoods society that, are just having some type of a mental illness of some kind. And I think it's important for people to know that the average, responsible, highly functioning adult person in the society is having these experiences.
And when John told me this, he wasn't putting any particular weight to it.
May I stop you and ask you, do you think that lack of remembrance or the foggy ending to it all is a product of something that they have caused to happen to the abductee, or a simple protectionist mechanism of the abductee?
Well, Art, it's probably a little of each. But I definitely think that the UFO occupants are able to block memory, to force memory to be somehow retained in the unconscious and not the conscious mind.
He must be mad, and he's talking about some new form of psychosis.
And the hopping.
But these people, as far as I could tell, were of sound mind, had not communicated with each other. We're not getting details from the media. This was long before the great media rash of information on this subject.
And the hopping.
They were reluctant to come forth, and they described similar stories in great detail and were shocked when they would hear that someone else had had a similar experience. And the only thing as a psychiatrist that I knew that behaved like that was real experience.
And the hopping, but the wing, this idea of something that could flap wings, it's come up in cycles in the past, and I suppose in terms of the whole huge UFO phenomena, the question that hangs in the air and everybody is reluctant really to commit any discussion to, if the gray beings are biological androids designed by an intelligence to work on this planet and interact with us, which is what the abductees say. That's not me, that's what the abductees say, that we're dealing with biological androids. If there is an intelligence out there sophisticated enough to make gray biological androids, then biological androids, anything could be made, genetically manipulated, and we might be seeing some kind of a new creature being tested on the Earth. Now that is far out speculation. It's what is very difficult to talk about because it does not sound scientific, but you have to consider some of these things.
There's lots of post-event effects is the table. I have that in. The most commonplace evidence is blood. And that will be from typically the nose or the ear. And that's probably because an implant was part of the procedures. And afterwards, there's from a drop to a small pool of blood. There were also a number of cases of straight line incision. And then the third type is a scoop, as if there was a tiny ice cream type scoop mark of sample of flesh. That sort of thing has been reported many times in the literature, and my project just supports what's already out there.
What about implants? What's the best evidence in that arena so far?
There's probably a large handful that have actually been extracted at this point. And the curious thing is that there's no extremely rare properties. If you hear that, that's just my other phone. My wife will get it.
Sold on this living health drug problem. I love you all. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquity, by the selfish and the tyranny of self.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought here. I lost my train of thought here.
Implants.
No. Yeah. With implants, the most curious aspect, to me, and I wish I could tell you this gentleman's name. He is within the community of UFO researchers, he is quite well known and extremely well respected. He insists on anonymity because he does his work at a university that frankly doesn't know he's doing it.
I understand.
And using their equipment.
Yes.
But he has taken some purported implants to an electron microscope and blown them up 100,000 times, 400,000 times. And he has an album of the photos taken through those microscopes.
Boy, would I like to see some of those.
One was very, very peculiar.
Boy.
Well, first of all, I have had some of my own abduction experiences since approximately 4 years old, and they stopped abruptly when I was 17. So I've had interest because of the fact that these events were going on. My first event occurred in 1952. Well, this is, obviously there was no one to talk to back then. There were no UFO groups or anything like that. I mean, what would an abduction be back then?
Now, did you have a conscious recollection of this, Derek?
As a matter of fact, I did, yes.
Okay, this was all from conscious memories.
Correct.
Okay.
And how I was involved in this, I've had an interest in this since I was 16. I worked with a psychologist in New Mexico who also had a very similar interest in studying UFOs, and I've went in through, when I stayed 2 years at New Mexico State University, I met some people who had abduction experiences and some other UFO experiences, and continued following that, became involved with the Houston UFO Network about 7 or 8 years ago very intensely, and agreed to head up their abduction section, and I felt like that I could do a pretty decent job there, and I also later headed up the physical investigation section, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Do think that there is a very human built-in device which says, I don't want to really remember this.
This phenomenon is partly, I think, about attempts to control our our perceptions of things. And I believe that definitely one can say there are terrestrial factions at work who are attempting to control our perceptions of the phenomenon by manipulating it one way or the other.
This is my land, I know well. Sometimes I hide inside the shell. Only a touch when you are near makes me cold. I close the windows, lock the doors, I build the walls. Screaming in the darkness, I am talking to my shadow. Screaming in the darkness for clue.
Many of the UFO reports that we've been getting over the years involve some very strange, what you might call paranormal phenomena or abilities associated with them. And many researchers don't know what to do with this stuff. They're hardcore, nuts and bolt hypothesis researchers that feel that UFOs are hardware from another solar system. And so a lot of this information just gets tossed out as frivolous or something that has nothing to do with the subject. And I decided that it was time to look at this and publish something on it. Paraphysical basically means something that can behave as if it had mass and weight on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, doesn't seem to have either. For example, you have UFOs that can take right-angle turns with no curve radius. You have UFOs appear visually on radar at point A, and then suddenly sort of disappear and reappear at point B with no flight path between the two. They seem to go somewhere and then come back from somewhere, from another dimension or whatever. Then you have UFOs that land, and they exhibit mass and weight. You have tripod marks, quadruped marks. Penetrometers indicate that there were tons sitting on those struts or whatever made the marks. You have a paradox here. You have something that behaves as if it had mass and weight at some times, and other times it appears that it's weightless. The falling leaf motion, for example, it's almost like something that is almost lighter than air, wobbling and hovering on its axis, bobbing on the air like a cork bobbing on the water. But there are a lot of other things that are curious about the UFO. You have not only them appearing and disappearing visually and on radar, you have their entities, like in the Andreessen case, pass through solid structures with ease, through walls, through doors. You have them, the entities appear as a ball of light and then become an entity and then disappear within a ball of light. And these are reports now. I'm saying if you take these things at face value.
And basically what I did was present on alleged human alien contact and medical complications of that. And what I expressed to these doctors in short was simply that we don't have any interest in convincing you of abductions, that exists. We don't really care what one thinks about that. All we want is your skills and powers to bring to bear concerning people who claim human alien abductions and have some physical evidence on their bodies. And we wanted them to check those particular lumps, bumps, or whatever those may be, people who claim these abductions, and check the areas themselves and see if they would in fact find two things. One is objects that would have different kind of nerve fiber in those nodules and no signs of inflammation. Of course, this was unheard of at the time, and whenever Dr. Lear removed the first objects from this lady, that's exactly what we found, was no signs of inflammation and the wrong nerve tissue.
In other words, the body was not attempting to reject this foreign substance that was inside it. Is that correct?
That's what it appears to be. We currently have 15 different objects that alleged by people to be abduction-related objects, perhaps implants, whatever they may be, who knows. 9 of them are from surgeries, and the other 6 are expelled from the body from various different ways, through the nasal septum, sneezing them out, and so on. Those, of course, we cannot verify. The only things we can verify as actually being from someone's body is, of course, from the surgery.
Now, what do these objects appear to be on the surface, and what do they appear to be made from, and do they appear to be manufactured? And what's all that noise in the background?
As to whether or not they're whether or not they're manufactured or what, we don't know yet, simply because we're doing a number of different tests with these objects. We have some interesting individuals that are coming forward and
Screaming in the darkness, I am talking to my shadow. Screaming
with the research, and they're doing some very extensive research on this. Some of the research has been done, and other research has been ordered by this one particular lab simply because of the apparently the remarkableness of what they either found or did not find that they should have.
Well, now, I am aware that at least one or several of these objects had been submitted for analysis. Is that correct?
A number of them have been submitted. 4 in particular have been sent to labs, and we also have other objects that have been sent to university labs in different locations. And some of these other objects we sent to the university labs are in fact objects that were reportedly expelled by people from their bodies as a result of abduction.
Screaming in the darkness, I am talking to my shadow. Screaming in the darkness for a clue.
Another UFO.
Boy, would I like to see some of those. One was very, very peculiar. Boy, would I like to see some of those.
One was very, very peculiar. I will describe this photograph as blown up 100,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
This, what was initially, in real focus, a tiny wafer, smaller than a computer chip.
Mm-hmm.
The cross section of that, and to say that what I'm going to describe to you would be the width of a hair would be extraordinarily overstating the case. But within, if you picture across your mind, if you take, say, a 4-inch swath, that's what I'm looking at in the photograph,
right,
is a 4-inch of the cross section of this wafer. Within that, there was about 1/20th of that width was something that was the same white color but was braided in a perfect braid as you would braid your hair.
Wow.
Across the middle of that. I don't think that there is anything on this earth that could create something like that. Now, what the purpose of that braid within that tiny wafer was, who knows? But it was extremely impressive to me.
For instance, if we find an isotopic range that's different than something we would find on Earth, that would suggest that it is another world source. If we find that function, or that the direction of the way these things are laid or manufactured are different than what we would have on Earth, that might give us 2 other possible sources that they are non-terrestrial.
And the thing was, John wasn't paying too much attention to this, but when we first, with that particular incident, but that was the first one we decided to look into. And we explored it first with as much information as he could recall, and then when we did hypnotic regression, out came a pretty disturbing experience, which he can tell you about.
All right. John, what did come out?
Well, as it turns out, see, you have to understand a little background on this. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm 47 years old. I'm born and raised in Manhattan. Bud will tell you I'm a big guy. I'm trained in martial arts. I am never afraid on the streets of my city, no matter what time of day or night. And what was unusual, that I found a little unusual, was that after I had seen this thing, and it was pretty close up, it was only maybe 40 feet away from me, I felt terrified. I thought something was going to leap out of the bushes, or someone was going to mug me, and I was having all these paranoid, fearful thoughts, and I literally began running home.
All right, let's back up. What did you see exactly?
Okay, it wasn't like a disc, or what I saw was an intense light. I mean, brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt your eyes to look at it. About, maybe 30 feet long and 15 feet thick in the middle, a football-shaped and intense football-shaped light. About the size of a van, and close up.
That's what I was going to ask.
Across from me.
Oh, over a rooftop. All right. Nevertheless, Brooklyn is a very populated area.
It was late. I was coming home from a dinner party. It was about 2 in the morning, and the streets were fairly deserted.
All right.
Although you're right, it's a major metropolitan area. Somebody must have seen something, but, how to connect with those individuals, I have no idea.
Sure.
What came out of the first session was that as I approached my house, 4 of these the little gray guys, they're about 3.5 feet tall with the big black eyes, emerged from behind a hedge that surrounded the front of the house that I lived in at the time. I became frozen for a second. At first, what happened was a really intense confusion set in. I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know if they were animals, if I didn't know what it was I was looking at.
Sure.
And then when I realized that these things weren't, in fact, animals, that they were something that I had never seen before, this panic set in that literally took my breath away. I was having trouble breathing.
What if there is a big celestial series problem? If the world goes out and expands the universe and all the things comes back and all of that, then all things are made programmed in DNA. So then when we come back, we're also getting clues. And then we have to sit down in our thinking chair, and we have to think.
Last spring, Dr. Roger Lear out in Ventura, California, extracted objects from 3 people who had reported encounters and had indicated to Daryl Sims, the UFO investigator in Houston, that they had these objects. The objects had then been observed on X-ray, and in a quite simple and straightforward series of surgeries, they were removed.
Oh, so it took surgery.
Yeah, they were surgically removed.
Where were they located?
Well, in one case it was in the toe, and 2 other cases they were in the hands, I believe, in this first series that we did.
Oh, my.
And what we primarily discovered that was unusual in this particular case was that the membranes that encased these implants, or these objects in these people's bodies, were made of substances from the outer layer of the skin. And yet they were somehow embedded in deep tissue. And material from the surface of the body can't grow like down inside the muscle tissue where these were embedded.
Right.
However, if someone wanted to make sure that the objects weren't rejected, one way to do it would be to embed them in a membrane that had been made from surface tissue. And indeed, on these individuals, in each case, there were found little scoop mark scars where surface material have been, at one point or another, inexplicably removed from their body.
All right, well, that makes...
Okay, just for a second. Now, there have been, over the years, there have been a number of papers and books that have been written about the Central Intelligence Agency's projects in the past with the attempting to control people through their physical brains. There have been projects like MK Ultra, like Artichoke, and so forth. There is a researcher here in the California area working at UCLA by the name of Dr. Julian West that was involved in this type of research. And as far back as the mid-1950s, there were developed the ability to control living creatures through brain implants. Okay, one fellow by the name, and boy, I tell you right now, it escapes me, was able to stop a charging bull,
of course, yeah,
by hitting a switch which sent a radio signal to this animal's brain through a small device that had been implanted. Sure. Now, do you think, or Dr. Lear think, that any of these, in fact, might be, any of these implants that have been removed might be from a terrestrial source? And have you suspected that any of these might just have been some type of debris that somehow became implanted in the person's body? You know, like a splinter or, you know. Dr. Lear?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and it's a real dilemma. So let me put the facts before you, and of course the listeners make up their own mind. First and foremost, so far we have found there's just a set of amazing biological findings. Let's forget the object itself. One of the most amazing findings is that the tissue surrounding these objects does not react with an inflammatory response. This is virtually a human impossibility. I know no research, even in the animal kingdom, where substances have been placed within the body without engendering some kind of a rejection reaction.
Entities communicate with mental telepathy. They create, this is interesting, they seem to create and conduct abductions, not physical abductions, but you have these abductees, for example, taken from a car, a bed, or a field, and see their bodies left behind. And they undergo the same type of abduction experience as someone who has a physical abduction experience. And even more strange is the fact that after being abducted and physically examined in this state of being, they come back to their bodies and you have the same scars. And you explain that. And then
in 1972, I was wounded in Vietnam. I received a bullet wound that came through my shoulder, embedded itself in my chest. And when the Army military doctors finally removed that, the guy told me that it probably could have remained in there for a long time without any ill effects. Now, you would think that, you know, especially something as foreign as a bullet would have been, you know. But there are people, my father, when he died in 1986, still had shrapnel in his legs from the Second World War.
Okay, I think what we're misconstruing here is the difference between a clinical rejection reaction and one that's microscopic. The intraocular implant surgery for the relief of cataracts, which is now the standard. In earlier days, of course, the only thing for a cataract patient was a Coke bottle lens more in front of your eye. Then came the intraocular implants, which went through some degree of refinement over the years, and now, of course, as I said, it's the absolute standard. So it's a very simple surgery to go in and have your lens removed and an implant put in. The interesting thing is where this all came from. And it really came out of some research that stems from the Second World War in which aircraft was being fired upon, and sections of the windshield would come exploding through the craft and hit the pilot in the face. Some of this became embedded to the eye. Now, as you stated with the bullet that was removed, they found that certain substances in the windshield had a low reactivity with the tissue in the eye. And this is where the idea came from that led Dow Corning's research into the production of implant material so that you can put in a lens. But when I'm saying low reactivity, I'm talking about the microscopic reaction of the body. For example, when you have the bullet removed, if it was looked at under a microscope with its surrounding tissue, you would see that the bullet and all the tissue around it would have been fibrosed. And the process that produces this isolates that object from the rest of your body. And this is the end product of chronic inflammation. Even a piece of shrapnel, if it doesn't cause physical damage, if you get rid of it, by isolating it.
So in other words, what the body does, the body produces some type of substance that in fact surrounds the foreign object in order to protect the rest of the body from... Is that basically the idea?
That's correct. The morphology of the cells which enter into the inflammatory reaction
Toby, is that you? Toby.
Who are attempting to control our perceptions of the phenomenon by manipulating it one way or the other.
Is that basically the idea?
That's correct. The morphology of the cells which enter into the inflammatory reaction, basically they're white cells. They're what we call differentiated white cells. And the initial ability for these cells is to remove the object. Naturally with a splinter or a piece of wood or some kind of material that the body can, what we call phagocytose, the cells just ingest it and carry it away. If it's a metallic substance, such as something that's acquired in a war wound, then the cells differentiate and they become what are called fibrocytes. These fibrocytes then lay down fibrous tissue, which walls off that substance from the rest of the body. Now, if it occurs cleanly with no infection, it's just a process that occurs over a long period of time. But even with that process, if you take out the object and you take out the surrounding tissue, look at it under a microscope, then you're going to see what's called a chronic inflammatory reaction. A reaction that has isolated the substance in the body for a long period of time. Okay, the metallic substances that were removed in themselves were covered with a very dark gray dense membrane or a cocoon.
An organic?
Or a biological jacket.
Organic or inorganic?
No, or it was definitely organic.
Okay.
And what was another unusual thing about this was that it was very difficult for me to pick up a surgical blade and try and cut into it. It just didn't happen. Now, surgical blades are pretty sharp because you can technically even whittle a bone with a 10 or a 15th blade. When you find something that you can't cut into, it's very strange.
Well, then how do you know that this material was organic?
Because when it was finally taken back to Texas with Daryl, he was able to dry it out. And when it was dried out, then he could scrape it from the object within, and then he sent specimens back to me, which I sent out for pathology. So we got a report on the composition of this jacket.
Okay, and this jacket then was encompassing a metallic sphere.
That's correct.
Now, what about this organic substance did you find that made it so unique?
Well, it was composed of essentially three portions. One is called a protein coagulum,
Which is?
Which is a long name for saying made from blood.
All right.
It's not made from the cellular portion of blood, it's made from the serum portion of blood. And I best describe this as, for example, we'll start with some plain Jello. So this is the blood coagulum, and was the Jello. Embedded in this coagulum.
Now, would you be able to tell if this source was from a human donor, or might this have been another type of creature that it came from?
We would have to speculate that if it was the biological jacket that was preventing any kind of inflammatory reaction occurring, then it would most from a human source, and not only a human source, but a particular human source, and that would be the source of originating with the host. So it would have to be the patient's own biology in order for it not to be rejected.
So in other words, after this object apparently was inserted somehow through some process, this jacket formed around it?
Well, I should think a little bit of possible mechanical engineering could be applied to this, and if I had such a device or such a tool or knowledge and I was going to perform this kind of a procedure, I would take my metallic device, then get the substances from the host, do a culture, add the ingredients, and then use that to surround the object, and then put the whole thing in the body.
Okay, now you said that there were three parts to this jacket. One apparently came from a blood source. What were the other two parts?
Okay, the pathologist noticed that on microscopy he was able to see some dark brown granules. And these were tested and found out to be an iron compound, and that iron compound is called hemosiderin.
That's also from blood, is it not?
Excuse me?
That's also from blood?
That is also from blood. It happens to be now the constituent that is found in red blood cells in the form of hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is the oxygen-carrying pigment that combines with oxygen in the lung, and then it's traveled around the body, gives up its oxygen to the tissues, and that's how we maintain life.
All right. And the third part?
The third part was as surprising as the other two, because it was composed of keratin. And keratin is composes the outer layer of our skin, our fingernails, our toenails, and things like the first few layers of the cornea of the eye. So it's kind of a strange combination.
Okay, I guess the next question, let me address this to Daryl. The next obvious question would be, what are the physical sizes or the norm for these objects?
The physical sizes of the object, the metallic objects that were retrieved, approximately a 1/4 inch long, about a 1/16 of an inch thick, and after they were cleaned off, they appear to be a shiny black metal that later, once it's finally cleaned off, showed different colors on it as well. And of course, that interested us in what all that is, what if anything that means. So the objects in the T-shaped formation in the first biological jacket, there were two objects in it that looked like a T. As soon as the jackets were removed, the objects clicked together because they were apparently highly magnetic. And the second object found on the other side of the lady's toe, deep inside, next to the bone, matched very similarly to the object that was retrieved out of the man's hand in the second surgery. There again, his object was encased in the same type biological jacket as well. And that really floored us.
That is a comparison between some abduction cases and some possession cases, alien abduction and demon possession. So far. 29 similarities. Let's say, we'll just call them entities at this point, okay? But both sets of entities seem capable of telepathic communication, hypnotic altered state induction, regression, time travel, obtaining some measure of physical and mental control over their subjects. Hosts at the soul level, establishing highly organized hierarchic networks capable of interacting with and controlling to some degree vast numbers of minions and human beings simultaneously. These entities display high degrees of familiarity with and command of seemingly exotic technology.
Yes.
They also seem capable of influencing humans to develop and utilize technology considered to be exotic or unique. These latter technologies often owe their genesis to areas having to do with human conflict and destruction. And to me, that is the last and most significant of the similarities to date that I've been able to nail down from various sources.
When the lady first came to me, I asked her, she told me about her experience. I said, what would convince me that you've had some experience? Is there any physical evidence to indicate your story may be true? And she handed me her x-ray. And I said, as I looked at the x-ray, I said, you could have stepped on a needle, it could have broken, it could have migrated. Things like this happen, lady. It could be that simple. And she said, that's possible. She said, the only problem is, she said, read the doctor's report. And of course, then at this point, I'd literally cut off my own head by saying that. I mean, here I am telling her what it probably is, but because I'm looking for a normal explanation, an obvious one. The lady shows me her medical report, in which her doctor who found these objects says they were surgical clips. They were installed as part of a surgical procedure.
Now say again, they were surgical?
They were some kind of clips in her feet that were supposedly due to a previous surgery, according to the medical report.
And this woman had no previous surgery?
That was the thing that floored me. So I started checking her records, and then I found later that her mother goes to the hospital, and they do a workup on her, and she's got one of these objects in her feet. And her doctor, a different doctor, under different circumstances, asked the same question. When did you have your other surgery for these metal clips in your feet? Her mother was quite frightened because she was there the night I interviewed her daughter, and her mother did not believe in this sort of thing. She was having a real problem with that, and here she is with these objects now in her feet.
Now, were you able to? Were there any? Was there any investigation into these purported abductions? Were these people? Did they have any conscious memories of this? Did they have to, in your opinion, be regressed? What was the story on that?
The lady had a pretty good memory of her event. I did one session with her.
You're talking about a
hypnotic regression session. Just to, and I have to be specific about this. I'm not comfortable with a lot of the techniques that I see used, quote unquote, for memory retrieval.
Well, first off, are you trained in hypnotic research, or in hypnotic regression?
I am a master hypnotherapist.
People who have had close encounters like that, there are other types of phenomena that start up that they've never had experience with before. Poltergeist phenomena, OBEs, electrical sensitivity, seeing apparitions and so forth. Almost seems there's a meta phenomena out there and that UFOs are part of it, just as OBEs and NDEs and all of this extrasensory phenomena or paranormal phenomena that are exhibited in throughout the world. So you have these paraphysical attributes of both UFOs and their entities that I think demand attention. If you are studying something, you don't leave out something because you don't like it or doesn't fit your hypothesis. And I decided to look at the paraphysical attributes of UFOs and entities, and in doing so, I saw that there were some tremendous similarities between the close encounter of the fourth kind of abduction experience, especially the OBEs abduction experiences, and the near-death experience. So you have all these similarities, and that's from UFO research. Dr. Kenneth Ring reports that he has a number of cases on file that he calls mixed motifs. And these cases involve persons who experience what seems to be a UFO abduction during a near-death experience, just what I found on the other end of the spectrum, and they report being on board the same type craft, the same type entities reported by abductees. It would almost seem that those abduction experiences involving physical examinations and things like that may not be specifically genetic engineering at all. It almost looks like we are being bred like we would breed a herd of cattle. In other words, people being tested, examined, and so forth, but something else that's coming. In a nutshell, I would make an analogy like this, that we have a dragonfly larvae, for example, that lives in a water dimension. And later on it transforms into a dragonfly that lives in a totally different air dimension. And I hypothesize, and this is just a summary statement, that perhaps the dragonflies are the entities and they're returning to care for and warn the larvae, us humans, that they are polluting the pond, the earth, so badly that the larvae's existence is in danger. No more larvae, no more dragonflies. And that would explain the abduction NDE similarities, the entity's great concern about Earth's ecology and its attempt to monitor and preserve the human form for the next plane of existence. We are they. And
they are us.
They are us. And no more us, no more them.
I suppose from the outset, three possible explanations present themselves. One, that people are just making it up, it's some kind of invention or hoax. Two, that it's real, there are aliens out there actually abducting people and they're describing truthful experience. Or three, they're interpreting as an abduction some mental experience produced by their brain. What's particularly striking about the abduction stories is how consistent they are. People report the same kind of experience again and again. Now, this could be because they've all met the same kind of alien, or it could be because similar things are going on in their brains.
I immediately shut my eyes and thought, oh God, and I started getting very scared. And then the next thing that followed after that was that my legs were being spread apart. And then I really started to panic, and then the next thing I felt after that was this most incredible pain that I've ever felt in my life, and that felt like a bullet shot up into my uterus and hit the top of my uterus. And I screamed so hard.
Sometimes you can see the fist being removed and taken away to be put into the column. Most times I just know it's happening. Though from my vantage point on a table with my legs in the air, I can't see too often much about what's going on or describe in detail how they do it.
In like little glass boxes, I've seen these babies.
UFO transforms into a dragonfly that lives in a totally different air dimension. And I hypothesize, and this is just a summary statement, that perhaps the dragonflies are the entities and they're returning to care for and warn the larvae, us humans, that they are polluting the pond, the earth, so badly that the larvae's existence is in danger. No more larvae, no more dragonflies. And this would explain the abduction NDE similarities, the entity's great concern about Earth's ecology and its attempts to monitor and preserve the human form for the next plane of existence. We are they. And
they are us.
They are us. And no more us, no more them.
Three possible explanations present themselves. One, that people are just making it up, it's some kind of invention or hoax. Two, that it's real, there are aliens out there actually abducting people and they're describing truthful experience. Or three, they're interpreting as an abduction some mental experience produced by their brain. What's particularly striking about the abduction stories is how consistent they are. People report the same kind of experience again and again. Now this could be because they've all met the same kind of alien, or it could be because similar things are going on in their brains.
I immediately shut my eyes and thought, oh God, and I started getting very scared. And then the next thing that followed after that was that my legs were being spread apart. And then I really started to panic, and then the next thing I felt after that was this most incredible pain that I've ever felt in my life, and that felt like a bullet shot up into my uterus and hit the top of my uterus. And I screamed so hard.
Sometimes you can see that it's being removed and taken away to be put into the columns. Most times I just know it's happening. Though from my vantage point on a table with my legs in the air, I can't see too awful much about what's going on or describe in detail how they do it.
In like little glass boxes, I've seen these babies. Their bodies are very, very tiny. They look very thin and emaciated almost. And they're very quiet. And they don't move. And it's almost a very sad picture.
This is another UFO on Over the Edge. KPFA, KPFB in Berkeley, KFCF in Fresno. The implants tonight.
I'm a hypnotic anesthesiologist and master level at NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And the techniques sometimes used for so-called memory retrieval are often, sometimes are dissociative techniques. In other words, they have the individual looking at the event behind a curtain or a TV or something like that, some dissociative technique to, well, that is not a good system to recover memory by. In fact, sometimes it can actually hamper or even distort memory.
Well, I'm sure that over the years, Daryl, you've heard the criticism about so many people that have used this technique on people that believe that something may be in their background. There have been accusations of having led the subject down the path that the researcher wants to go. I'm sure you've heard that.
Of course, and I would like to address that in reference to ourselves and what we do currently. What we do, first of all, is the cases that we're interested in have to have physical evidence. In other words, there has to be something to back up what you're saying. If the physical evidence does not match your story and there is no evidence at all, there are plenty of researchers out there who would love to work those type cases. I'm not one of them at this point, because we have to graduate to a point where we can find evidence and be coherent about that, and then that evidence must stand medical and scientific scrutiny. And that's not up to us to say, is this an implant or what is it? It's up to engineers and others who evaluate this to make those determinations, not us.
So what is the bottom line on that?
Well, the bottom line for me is simply, if in fact UFOs exist, they should be able to be photographed. They have been. If abductions exist, and if surgical procedures are being performed on these people, or other physical evidence turns up as a result of abduction or close encounters of some kind with these beings, there should be evidence of that. I think that that will turn up. I'm not saying that what we have is it. What I'm saying is if we proceed this way and with a scientific and medical approach, I think that's the only way that we can go and be responsible and can turn up the possibility of evidence. And this evidence has to be turned over to people who are not UFO-related investigators. First of all, I think something's happening to some of these people, because like I said, I've had my own experiences, and I have conscious memory of that. And
no, I'm not talking about all of them.
Happening to some of these people. I don't know about all of them. And I think at this point, and I think enough has happened in the UFO community that now we need to focus down. There are plenty of good cases. We need to focus down on these cases that we claim to be very good, very viable, very credible, and these things need to be scrutinized in every sense of the word. And I don't mean in a brash and unprofessional or unethical way, but simply that they need to be analyzed by whatever forces that we can bring on that to clear these things up. We need to put this thing to rest or evaluate it and find out exactly what's happening.
You know, the idea of UFOs, for 50 years they've been saying publicly that there is no national security considerations with this subject. I think you and I and Dr. Lear and everybody listening to this program knows that that is not true. It is incorrect. I think it was deliberately thrown out there to mislead the public. But
it opens up yet another Pandora's box.
That then asks the question,
it suggests that there's more than one species involved.
What is the underlying reason for the secrecy?
One nationality of human being, or species, if you will.
We're talking about more than one genus, more than one...
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah. And in fact, even in this one, the creatures that I described just a little while ago, it clearly appears that there are different species of those. We find different features, like, for example, the same typical species would have a snout-nose feature, whereas others have virtually no facial features. In other words, there's no prominent nose or mouth or anything like that.
What do they want from us?
Well, that, again, is a very difficult question to answer because...
Opinion, what is it?
Well, I've talked to two people that have come forward recently. One of them is a former lieutenant commander of Project Blue Book. He was a liaison from that. And he said he is prepared. He said, Mr. Sims, he said, I am sick and tired of the stuff. He said, we lied all the way through, even about the good cases. He said, I don't know anything about this abduction stuff, but I can tell you right now, we in Project Blue Book lied all the way through.
Of course they did, and that's an open secret.
I said, I just need you to come forward and say that and identify yourself. We found the two pilots who were sent up to intercept the UFOs in 1952 over the White House, the Capitol building.
Right.
They were threatened privately because after they described what they saw, what they encountered, one of them gave up his commission and became a commercial airline pilot, and I interviewed him, got him on tape.
That we had some knowledge of the alien agenda. We don't really know what the alien agenda is. We can only derive from analysis the facts of what we see. Clearly what is going on, there is, aside from the fact that there's a genetic engineering program, and that's another mix altogether, but apparently they have abducted, is a term that's been commonly used, human beings from all walks of life with no apparent rhyme or reason to a selection process for at least 4 generations now. We've been able to document that they've been taken, given medical examinations, extract semen from males, extract eggs from females, fertilize eggs to a half-breed, shall we say, re-implant the egg in the womb. The female, of course, is pregnated, will carry the fetus for 3 months and will be reabducted and the fetus extracted. In some cases, we've had twins where one of the twins was extracted just before birth, which is got to be quite a shock for a mother who, is told she's having twins for 9 months.
This is going on.
Going on, absolutely, right now, today, in very significant numbers.
And the government knows about it.
Absolutely.
And they're quite happy about it because some deal's been done.
We have evaluated as many as 3,000 cases in North America.
So out there in outer space, there's a whole lot of half-breeds going around, half alien, half human, and...
well, we don't really know what the purpose is for anything like that. I mean, maybe they're trying to seed another planet, who knows what. There's been speculation about they're trying to reinstitute some that are on the downside of an evolutionary curve. They're trying to reinstitute some lost qualities or something or other.
When were they threatened?
As soon as they landed at Langley Air Force Base.
In 52?
In 1952. I got his flight log and everything. I've verified the story. And when he landed, they asked him in 2 separate rooms, what did you see? They described it, and they looked at him and said, no, you didn't, and you'll never repeat this again, and then threatened. The one pilot said, they're not going to be sent up by my government to look at something, I don't know what in the world it is, and then told, and then threatened in this manner, so he apparently gave up his commission and became a commercial airline pilot. He just retired.
We had some rather extraordinary cases, quite a number really, involving the study of human emotions, where they will create a scenario, almost being able to create a psychosomatic environment. Those who have seen the new features of Star Wars Deep Space Nine, they have a holodeck where they seem to be able to simulate a thing. Well, it's almost as if that sort of environment is created in order to extract or elicit from a human being a specific emotion. They'll take that individual into a specific room. We've identified the specific apparatus they'll use to put on the head of the individual, and they'll put a similar apparatus on the head of one of the aliens. Will somehow trigger a replay mechanism, if you will, and force the human to relive the experience mentally and transpose the whole emotional process to the entity. And then that one will get up, they'll bring another one in, and they'll go through this process 12 times for the same incident, for example. And it's kind of remarkable because one might assume, well, gee, with all this kind of technology, you'd think they have the ability to do a multiple memory dump or something or other, but that's clearly not, those aren't the facts of what we're getting in these cases.
These UFO, whatever these UFOs are, have the ability to adapt apparently to the geography.
His military flight record.
Will either of these people go on the record?
Or the people who perceive them in ways that their cultural background prepares them to see them.
Yes.
Of course it will.
And so one begins to question then, is this phenomenon about what's out there, or is it about what's in here? And I'm pointing to my head.
One of them already has.
Is this phenomenon about what's out there, or is it about what's in here? And I'm pointing to my head.
Sometimes conscious hoaxes. Sometimes people with who hallucinate.
Yeah, there's lots of post-event effects. Is the table I have that in.
Well, Don, from a medical standpoint, I probably should talk about, just very briefly, about the 3 surgical procedures that were performed on May the 18th.
Just last month?
Yes, just last month. We did one case, which was similar to the other 2 as far as findings so far are concerned. The other 2 cases were not similar. What we did was to ellipse or to remove a small segment of the skin and all the tissue below with 2 ladies, lesions on the leg. And of course I did this with a general surgeon. We found that with these unusual markings having to do with abduction, that there was a hard nodule that was formed. And these met the criteria because there was a shadow on the x-ray. So those 2 cases were in themselves the same, and in between I had performed another case with a dermatologist, in which there was a similar nodular structure in the back of the neck. And this came back called a calcifying epithelioma, which is a rather common lesion. But after going into the clinical history with the pathologist, we found that this was not a very typical lesion. Usually this kind of a lesion occurs quite small and over a period of time enlarges. The clinical history of this case was a sudden onset, about the size of a dime, and it shrunk to about the size of a pinhead, so it was reversed.
You're talking about the nodule.
The nodule. So when we excised this, it had the same two portions. It had the abnormal skin portion and the nodular portion. Well, then I separated the two and sent the nodular portion for analysis, which we've just obtained some preliminary elemental analysis along with some of the other things. But I can tell you this, it's not calcium.
What do you think it is?
Well, it's composed of other metals, and as I said, it did not fit the clinical or the pathological description of a calcifying epithelioma.
Well, now, was this not covered for a possible television special? Wasn't television producer Bob Kiviat there present?
Amongst others, he was there. We had quite an audience from all over the world. From Japan, we had Bob Dean and his wife, Michael Lindemann and his wife. We had Whitley Strieber. There was a long list of individuals that attended this to witness the procedures.
And then immediately following that is this wave of just calm and recognition. The thing that shocked me the most was the recognition. I felt like I knew these things. I knew these beings. I knew who they were.
So you feel as though they induced this in you suddenly and removed the fear?
Yeah, there's some kind of control, mind control, emotional control, maybe some kind of physical control. I don't pretend to know.
There seems to be the possibility that these devices are not primarily for tracking, but
exactly what's at work there.
Primarily for controlling or moderating the flow of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. And it would appear to me, based on people, neuropsychologists and others I've talked to, that they possibly could control the behaviors of these individuals.
There's definitely some kind of mind control or something at work there.
Dr. Lear, do you give any credence to that?
Oh, I think it's, at this point, it's highly speculative, but one of the things that we seem to be finding are these nerve proprioceptors. So evidently there's some relationship between the object, whatever it may be, and the nerves.
My instinct was to turn and run as fast as I could, and I just couldn't move.
One of the tests that we did was the use of a Gauss meter prior and post the surgery we did in the hand.
Does that not check the magnetic field?
That's correct. One was putting out an electromagnetic field, it just shot the meter off the scale.
And then my panic just subsided.
And after it was removed, we took it out in the specimen container. It was doing absolutely nothing.
Really?
So it appeared to only be operating when it was within the body?
That's correct.
State where I was completely at ease with the situation.
Now, as far as controlling behavior,
facts felt like I knew these beings. I think that can be attributed to the fact that they somehow wipe your memories after these experiences happen.
Possible.
And that every time you see them, it's almost like you're seeing them for the first time.
Any area that you could put something in relationship to a nerve is a direct pathway to the brain.
Until that recognition sets in. There was something very familiar about it at that point.
Was there a communication? Did they tell you what they wanted, or why you, or what was about to happen, or any form of communication other than a feeling of calm?
No, yes, sir. You hear them in your head. Nobody talks to you, but you know what they're thinking or saying. It's usually reassurances, calming things, the way you would talk to a child who's upset. They say things like, we're not going to harm you. This isn't going to hurt. This is something we have to do. You're doing just fine. Almost like a doctor's bedside manner.
Right. Art, one interesting thing that I remember from that session was as they were saying those things, and John was terrified and earlier, and then in this sort of calm state, he sort of whispered as if he was repeating what they were saying to him, and they said to him, "Don't worry, this is only a dream." Yes. This is only a dream. Yes.
My dreams never tell me that.
Any nerve, any sensory nerve anywhere in the body, under the right circumstances, with the right hormonal influences and the neurotransmitters necessary, can produce pain. So it seems to me, if I were going to put an implant in somebody, I wouldn't be too fussy. I'd get it in the easiest spot.
And that can be anywhere.
Anywhere. Now, of course, I've been doing foot surgery for 32 years, and I've taken about everything there is out of the foot. And it seems like lately I've seen more of these individuals with items in toes and in the foot. I've had patients that have come in that don't know what I'm doing. They're just regular general patients that have objects in their feet. And I'm certainly not going to suggest to them that they may be alien in origin, so we just go ahead and take them out.
Most people who are abducted are taken very early in childhood. Somewhere between 3 and 6 years old is the first experience. It tends to be a very brief visit, not an abduction per se, but a visit to the child's bedroom, and just a getting acquainted session. There may be a few of those before the child is actually taken, which is more like in adolescence. But once the child has reached puberty, then it can go full throttle. What the important point is that with very few exceptions, and that may just be because the exceptions have not delved deeply enough into their own case history, an individual is either taken beginning in early childhood and then many times throughout their life, or they're not taken at all. People don't just have a random abduction experience in their 20s and then never again. There are very few cases where somebody happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm thinking of a girl who went to sleep over at a girlfriend's place at 13 or 14 years old, and not knowing that her friend, the home where she was visiting, that girl was a long-time experiencer, if you will, or abductee. And so both of them were taken. Thereafter, the visitor to the home, the sleepover girl, became repeatedly abducted thereafter, but that's the very unusual case.
Back to the chain of evidence. We have been, and from the beginning, extremely careful in the handling of these objects from the time they come out to when they finally wind up at a laboratory. We have that the surgery, of course, is documented both photographically and then physically witnessed by numerous individuals. We have professional writers on the team who write about it. Then the evidence itself, I devised a solution to put them in, which is what I felt was a safe biological liquid. We remove a portion of the patient's blood, spin it down, remove the serum, mix that with an anticoagulant and a preservative, put the objects in a test tube, and this mixture and so forth seems to work quite well. The biological portion stay with me, and as a safety factor, we divide the biological specimens into several pieces, and they are independently sent to certain laboratories over a period of time so that we get 3 cooperating laboratories. The metallic portions, again, are only delivered in the most rigorous way. We either transport them personally and stay with them
The most commonplace evidence is blood.
We either transport them personally and stay with them through their analysis, or we give them to somebody that's within our system who is very trustworthy. And I think that's a pretty good way of carrying on with a chain of evidence. The interesting thing about all of the cases that we've removed some type of metallic foreign body is that there's no evidence of a portal of entry. We've used magnification to not only cover the area where we see the object on an X-ray, but we cover a very wide area because sometimes foreign objects do travel within the body. There's absolutely no scar and no noted portal of entry.
Is it possible they beam it in?
Certainly a large factor in repeated abductions is reproduction related. That's not the only thing that's going on, but that occurs for both men and women.
We have used MRI, and the objects will show in an MRI. It also will show in a CAT scan. However, strangely enough, again, there is absolutely no noted abnormality in the surrounding tissue.
In about 40% of the cases, whether it's a man or a woman, it's about 40% for each of the numbers that have been involved in this project. They go through something, they recall something that was related to a gynecological procedure for a woman or the extraction of sperm for a man. The other 60% either do not recall something that did occur or it simply did not. So there's been a great deal of emphasis in books in recent years about implanting of embryos in female subjects and then the later extraction of a fetus.